Will you pray with me? Gracious God, may the words of my mouth and the meditation of all of our hearts be acceptable to you, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. Today marks the beginning of Lent, a strange season by any measure. If you grew up Catholic, you might know about Lent. Many of us were taught that it's a time of ashes and fasting and focusing on our sinfulness, a time to give up something we enjoy in the name of getting right with God. If you grew up in a more non-traditional faith, say Pentecostal or evangelical, you might have no idea what we're talking about. And since we have a fair amount of folks from both camps and many in between in this congregation, I thought it would be good for us to talk a little bit about Lent, where it came from, what it teaches us, and in this particular cultural moment, why we need it so badly. Just to cover the basics, Lent is the roughly 40-day period that leads up to Easter Sunday, the most significant celebration in the Christian year. Easter is essentially the reason we exist. And because Easter is always set according to the lunar calendar and the timing of the Jewish feast of Passover, Lent always occurs in the spring. In fact, the word Lent comes from the Old English word lengthen, which is the season when the days grow longer, in which they lengthen. But the winter barrenness remains. It's that particularly dicey period when your stockpile of winter canned goods begins to dwindle, but the first picking of the lands are weeks or months away. It's a lean and hungry time, spiritually and physically, hence Lent. However, Lent as we know it today is found nowhere in the Bible. It's more of a churchy thing. Oh, you'll definitely find wilderness stories, like the one we had this morning, and heartfelt psalms of lament. But you won't find any biblical commandment to spend these 40 days prior to Easter in fasting or penance. You won't find any finger wagging against eating chocolate or candy, or spending too much time on Facebook, or engaging in a favorite after-dinner cocktail, say a classic Manhattan straight up with Eagle Reserve bourbon. Did you get that, choir? Eagle Reserve bourbon. Somebody write that down. No, Lent became a thing when early Christians started forgetting what it feels like to follow Jesus. When folks who had once been persecuted for resisting the empire's unjust and oppressive values started supporting them instead. Once Christianity was declared the official religion of Rome, many stopped rocking the imperial boat. This once radical faith, which required self-sacrifice and compassionate courage and spoke hard truths to power, now became part of the mainstream religious status quo. And so it lost its edginess. It began to conform. It watered down its message. Or as theologian Barbara Brown Taylor put it, Lent began when the church decided to be nice instead of holy, and God groaned. I think God is still groaning. Because here's the thing about being the church in the first century or the 21st century. It isn't supposed to be easy or comfortable. Following the one who risked his very life to challenge the powers and love his enemies and cross the boundaries and tell the truth about what matters most in life, following that guy will cost us something. At the very least, for us, in our age of American empire, it should make it hard for us to fit into a culture that worships at the mall and celebrates the family values of the Kardashians. At the very least, being a Christian today should make it awkward for us to support a country that would rather fund prisons than schools, or rather build walls than welcome refugees. And so our ancient ancestors, in their great wisdom, decided we needed a season like Lent, and we do. Because Lent is the time when we dare to say those things, when we dare to feel those things. and admit that there is a wide gulf between who we are and who Jesus calls us to be. It's the time when we drop that facade of functionality that we cling to so desperately and face into our own brokenness, our own incompleteness, our own complicity with the systems of the world that keep us distant from God and one another. Lent is the season when we dare to keep it real, people, or as Julie read for us this morning, Lent is the season when moonlight upstages La La Land. And of all the reasons why I love Jesus, and there's a lot, in the top 10 easily is the fact that he keeps it real. Let's just look at today's passage. Now, it comes on the heels of Jesus' baptism. That's the few verses right before where John started this morning. That glorious moment when Jesus realizes that he has a special calling on his life, a special God-given identity. But instead of riding out that inaugural moment for as long as he could take it and basking in the amazement of the crowds and all that, Jesus makes a different choice. He heads straight into the wilderness to keep it real for himself. And the wilderness is a central metaphor for Lent. There is nothing there in that wilderness to distract us. There's no hiding places where we can avoid ourselves. It's where we come face to face with our limits and our flaws, and we learn what we can count on and what we can't. Spiritually speaking, it's the place where we come to know what is truly real in our lives. And the story of Jesus' temptation in the desert is a story about Jesus discovering what's truly real for him. Now, as Carrie said, when we hear that word temptation, especially in a church context, specific things might come to mind on the child's end of things, candy and all of that. We might think of those 7 deadly sins, a few of which like lust or greed or gluttony. Those might be the things that come to mind as temptations. But Jesus' temptations aren't those things. He's tempted by the very things that you and I know to be essential for human existence when you think about it. Bread, security, and power. And there is nothing truly wrong with any of those things. Psychologist Abraham Maslow saw them as part of our human hierarchy of needs. Those components of life required for every person to be healthy in mind and body and spirit. Every human being needs to be fed, to feel safe, and exercise our power, our agency to whatever degree we are capable. In and of those things in and of themselves are really not bad at all. So I wonder, why does Jesus resist them? Why do we start this season of Lent with this reading? What's really at stake here? Putting this story in the context of Jesus' baptism might give us a clue. Because Jesus emerged from that water, bathed in a profound new identity, that of God's beloved child. And heading into the wilderness was a way of testing whether he really believed that to be true. And so I believe that in this story from Matthew, Satan is using bread and worldly power and safety as props, really. Basically, what he's trying to do is get Jesus to second-guess God. He tries to sow the seeds of mistrust in God's ultimate love. So when he tempts Jesus, what Satan is really saying is, life is hard. You will go hungry. You won't have enough. You can't trust God to fill any of those needs. I'm the only one you can trust. I've got your back. Satan echoes what the world tells us every day, that who we are, just as we are, is never enough. And when God calls us her beloved, we can't trust it. And so we need to hoard food and stuff, even if it means our neighbors do with less. We need to climb the ladder of power and success, even if it means compromising our integrity. And we can only have faith if God offers us a guarantee, offers us proof, which really isn't faith at all. I think we've all been there in one way or another. But that's not what it means to own that identity that we all claim as God's beloved. That's not what it means to trust God. But trusting God is where it always has to start. Now, I know that kind of faith may feel like an impossibility for many of us. I have to tell you, it definitely feels that way for me right now. Lately, I've been having a hard time letting God take the reins. I've been having way too many of those 3 a.m. moments where I lie awake and stare at the ceiling, wondering where God is in all of this. And I lie awake trying to solve the problems myself. It's my own wilderness moment. And I'm going to take off my facade of functionality for just a moment and tell you that I find it much easier to preach about trusting God than to do it. This is my Lenten wilderness right now. What is yours? What are you struggling with? Where do you feel lost or abandoned? This is the season not to run away from that feeling, but to face into it. That's what Lent is about. Each of us needs a 40-day rehearsal to break ourselves free from whatever the insecurities or anxieties or doubts or fear-based temptations, and learn to walk in a new path. And in my case, and perhaps in yours, that means learning to trust in God, that no matter how lean and stark my wilderness feels, that I will be given what I need. I think for Jesus, that was really at the root of his temptations too, trusting God. And I think no matter what might have come up for you when I asked you the question, if you peel back so many of the layers of our own anxieties of fear, we might find that same struggle too. So today, as this family called First Congregational Church, as we take those first tentative steps into the wilderness together, I invite you to try something. In your bulletin, there's a yellow index card. You all should have one. If you don't have one, I don't know if there's any extras an usher can help you with, but you can really write it on anything you have. So I invite you to take a moment, take the cards out, find a pen or pencil. There's some in the red pew pads, or maybe a neighbor has a pen. And on one side of the card, I want you to write the word trust at the top. And on that side, write down something in your life where you feel God is strongly supporting you. Maybe it's the love of your family and friends. Maybe it's excellent health. Maybe it's a particular calling or purpose in your life that you just feel the conviction of God's love and support in every day. It can be something you might worry about from time to time. We all do. But you feel deep down that God has your back in this. Take a moment and write down something you trust God with. And when you're done, turn the card over, and on the other side, write down one thing that is really difficult for you to hand over to God right now. Maybe it's a relationship that's causing you a lot of pain, or it's a challenge at your job, or a financial problem, or a really tough decision you have to make. Anything where you feel particularly insecure, where you feel God is absent. On that side of the card, I ask you to write the word mistrust at the top. And I invite us all to take those cards home with us and carry it with us during the week. And every day, take a moment to pull that card out and begin with the side that says trust, and give thanks to God for that part of your life where you feel God has your back. Offer a prayer of thanksgiving. It's so important to remember that you can feel that trust in your life. That helps us in the wilderness. And then turn the card over and pray for the thing that you are having a hard time trusting God with. That 3 a.m. problem that you just can't let go of. Begin, perhaps, if that prayer is hard to come by, maybe take the little step of trusting that your prayer actually matters to God. Trust that you are supported within this community of fellow wilderness wanderers. Know at the very least that God hears you. And if you are feeling inclined, I invite you to email me during the week and let me know how your wilderness is feeling as you consider what you can trust and feel trust about God and what you struggle with. See if anything shifts for you during that week. See what your week's walk in the wilderness might reveal for you. Because trust is at the heart of our relationship with God and one another. But it can be so hard to hold on to that trust. And so we have to be intentional about it. We have to practice it. That's why it's the very first thing Jesus does after his baptism, after his inauguration. He goes where it's hard. He risks facing himself. He risks finding God. And that season of Lent is our 40-day rehearsal for this sacred work, our time to admit where we have lost our way and maybe cozied up to empire, forgotten what it means to follow Jesus. But the good news is this: Jesus has staked out the way for us. We do not make this journey alone. God is in the wilderness waiting for us, and we can trust that. May it be so. Amen.